Welcome, everybody, to episode number 53. Yes, I said 53. Welcome. I'm Doug. We have Robbie here. Robbie, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. I love the fact that you said the episode number, not the actual name of the show. We are the Sports Blitz.
Sorry about that.
We're episode 53.
Written down.
Yeah.
It's not written down. It's episode number 50. If they don't know who we are by now, then we're in trouble. We're after 53
Some
episodes.
people may be newly coming out from underneath the rocks, Doug.
The cave,
coming out of the cave.
Right.
You never know. You never know who's stumbled upon us.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're coming out of the cave or you're coming from under the rock, you might want to go back in because it's not time to come out yet. And
listen to us first and then go on back underneath. Yeah.
We are the Sports Blitz. This is episode number 53. We have a very, 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 how many berries can I do? Very special guest
At least 10,
tonight.
right? At least 10.
At least 10. She deserves at least 10.
Yeah.
Very special guest. We're very excited to have. And I'm not even going to say who it is yet. I'm just gonna give a little synopsis here. She's a radio DJ. She's a radio consultant, Rush founder. She's a professor, a writer, baseball historian, radio historian, and an all-around good egg. Donna Halper, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. I love it when you say we're going to have a great guest tonight. And I'm like, yeah, and she'll be along later. But right now we
That's right. Who is that guest? Where's that?
Yeah, really.
Is she
Thank
arriving?
you for having me on your show. One of the things a lot of people don't know about me is that I've been a baseball fan ever since I was a kid. And many people that know me about like Rush and rock and roll, and I was a DJ and blah, blah, blah. But baseball has been a part of my life since I was growing up. And I remember, convincing my father, nobody in my family was a baseball fan. I remember convincing my father to take me to Fenway Park, which is still standing. And it was like, I can't believe I'm here. I was just a kid, so I didn't know like the history of the place. I just knew that this was way cool. And it's still to this day, I love just going out to the ballpark. You can't do it now, but there will come a time, So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come on and talk a little baseball. I had a wonderful time a couple of months ago on a friend of mine's show, a guy named Bob Busser, who you may or may not know, award-winning Hall of Fame photographer. And he takes photographs of ballparks and stuff like that. But we didn't talk a lot about baseball. We talked some. So this is kind of a real treat for me. And I'm thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely, Donna. I go back with Donna to the old Emerson days. I shouldn't say old. It was bad. The Emerson, that's correct. The Emerson days, I took every single class with Donna, no matter what class.
For those who are watching out of state, Emerson refers to Emerson College, which is a school in Boston where people historically that wanted to go into the media, that's where they go. And it's not a trade school, it's an actual college. But I'm saying it's got a radio station, it's got a TV station, it's got a newspaper, it had a radio station from 1932 on. So it didn't come late to the party. It didn't just suddenly decide last week. There are generations of trained professionals from all over the country who went to Emerson. And even when I was a radio consultant, I used to teach there before I came to Leslie, before I had my PhD, when I was still working full-time in broadcasting before the industry changed and we all ended up on the beach. But the reality is that it was a lot of fun teaching some courses about the history of broadcasting and the history of journalism and et cetera, because even back then, media history fascinated me, and it still does. So yeah, Doug was one of my students, and boy, look what happened, And now he does podcasts. What can I say?
I don't know. I don't have any idea. But it's.
No,
but
we had
it's
some fun
really,
though. We had a lot
Yes.
of fun because
Yes, we did.
studying the history of the media, to me, is a way of saying thank you. Okay? I mean, these are the people that entertained us, that informed us, that in many cases gave us stuff to think about. And here we are today, and in many cases, these folks are forgotten. Okay? Like, I just had a new piece put up on the SABRE website. And for those that are not familiar, that's the Society for American Baseball Research. And I'm a member, one of the volunteers on the SABRE Bio Project. And we write biographies, biographical sketches of people that are famous, people that are nearly famous, people that are not famous at all. But our job is to just make sure that various people are remembered. And my expertise is in the sports writers, because as somebody who was in media, that's kind of where my heart is. The play-by-play people, the sportscasters, and
Right.
the sports writers. Oh, by the way, total aside, Vin Scully is now on.
I saw that. Yes.
Vin
Yes.
Scully.
Yes.
Vin
Legendary
bleeping
Vin
Scully.
Scully.
Okay, I mean, people are sitting there going, "Oh." Vin Scully was one of the old school play-by-play announcers. Vin Scully can paint a picture with words such that you're sitting there and he'll tell you stuff you didn't even notice. I know people, I tweeted about this morning. I know people that would go to the game and they'd bring a transistor so that they could hear Scully describing the game they were watching. Okay? I know people that watch the game on TV. They turn down the volume, so that they could have Scully explaining it. The guy's a legend. And unfortunately, a lot of today's play-by-play announcers grew up with television. So they just assume you're watching the pictures. But there's an entire generation of people for whom words were their stock in trade, okay? And they could describe stuff. I mean, as a writer, I just have such admiration for people who can describe things the way that Vin Scully and Kurt Gowdy and some of those folks did. How old is Vin now? Anybody know? I mean, he's got to be pushing 90.
Yeah.
I mean, he was old when I was a kid.
And he just retired a couple years back. So
Doug's Googling it even as we speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I would never do on-air research. Never.
In this case, you have my permission.
Not at all.
It's just, I would never do that. He's 92.
Yeah, I
92
figured he was
years
like
old.
around 90. I kind of figured, okay?
92 years
And sharp as a tack, okay? You would like to be as sharp at 90 as he is, okay? It's interesting, though, and I found it a little bit sad. Talk about the era that we're living in. When he did his little, welcome me to Twitter message, he said, now we're all going to get together and talk baseball, but let's not be controversial. And it's like he had to remind people we're not talking politics.
Yeah.
How sad, okay? Because I remember growing up, I had no idea if the members of the team, whatever team, I didn't know if they were righties, if they were lefties. I mean, who did they vote for? What were their politics? Who cared? All we cared about is, could they hit a baseball? Or could they throw? Or did they have a good slider? Or stuff like that. And today, it's all just, well, I won't go see that team because that guy voted for Obama. Yeah, but that guy voted for Trump. And I'm like, so what? Who won last night? Okay? Baseball used to be, and same with football, these used to be the places where we went for catharsis, for escape, for an opportunity to just take our mind off of everything and just enjoy watching some talented performers. I mean, I could never be as athletically gifted as some of these folks. And whether they voted for my guy or not, so what? So yeah, welcome to the wonderful world of Twitter, sir. You know, we're glad that Vin is there, and I'm just glad he's still alive.
Yeah.
I've never heard a bad thing about Vin Scully. I mean, Doug and I, and maybe you also, we've been in broadcasting for a while, off and on. I had more than a 4-decade career. I met some people that were just total jerks. Okay, if I didn't have to do business with them, I never would have. And then I met some other people that were just the kindest, most down-to-earth people. Vin Scully, I am told, is in that category. I'm told that even though he is one of the most famous play-by-play guys in the history of the world, it's like, yeah, whatever. Just nice person. I like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously.
Very long aside.
Yeah, no, obviously for me, like when I think of Vin Scully, I always think back, and it was before my time, the Kirk Gibson homer off of now Red Sox broadcaster Dennis Eckersley in the World Series on one leg, basically. So just one of those moments that will live on in baseball infamy and in sports infamy, really.
Oh, yeah.
So
speaking of one leg, I tweeted this afternoon about Jim Abbott. Now, I don't know if you remember Jim Abbott.
One arm, yeah.
Jim Abbott was born without a right hand.
Yeah.
And yet from the time he was a kid, he wanted to be a ball player. Now, lucky for him, and he has said this in interviews, I would be lying if I ever said I met him. I never did. But I sure met the kinds of parents that he had. He had parents that were like, no, you're not handicapped. No, you're not disabled. You don't have a hand. You want to play? Fine. It looks like you got to throw with the other hand, right? Okay, so let's learn to do that. And just basically take it as far as you can take it. There was no pressure on him to be a major leaguer. He said, come on, when I was 5, I wasn't thinking to be a major leaguer. I was just trying to figure out, what am I going to do with the glove? If I want to throw the ball, what do I do with? And he said, after you practice for a while, it just becomes like second nature, okay? And gradually, he became a role model that he never intended to be. But he became a role model for people because it was like he never let anything stop him. And the fact that he was able to not only make it to the major leagues, but I mean, one year he won 18 games. He had like, a 2.89, I think, earned run average. He was number 3 in the Cy Young voting.
Pitched a no-hitter.
He pitched a no-hitter later.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this with one hand, okay?
Yeah.
I know people that can't do that with 2 hands. So yeah, I mean, there are some people, all you can do is just go, wow, my hat's off to you, okay? Is there somebody that you guys find really inspiring? Is there somebody that if you were trying to tell people like, yeah, this athlete, this ball player, wow, this person is relentless, this person is amazing, who would that be?
I would actually say, and this is sort of more recent, John Lester. John Lester, because,
he's a survivor.
Yeah, there's a guy fought a battle with cancer, won that battle, and he sort of has turned it into sort of this mantra of never quit. And, it's true. He really just goes out and just does not only great things on the field, but great things in the community. I had a chance, I remember, few years ago to work at baseball camp that he hosted for kids in the city of Boston. Just a overall really good guy of the game, and I definitely say his just attitude and what he's been able to accomplish definitely, I would say, is very inspiring without a doubt.
Absolutely. Doug, you got anybody?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about baseball, I think it would probably be. The first person that came to my mind was Jim Rice, and I guess the reason Jim Rice came to my mind is because when he started, there was this thing about Boston, and I know we're talking about it today too. There was this thing about racism in Boston that nobody wanted to come here because of all the all the racism that was happening. You'd hear
Red
if you
Sox
were
were
a
the
ball
last
player in
team
the
in Major
stands.
League
Yeah,
Baseball to have a black player. They didn't get a
right,
black player until 1959. I remember. Tom Seaver,
exactly.
poor baby.
Yeah, yeah. And so when I think of Jim Rice, I think of somebody who I started watching in the 70s when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, and even before that. I probably started watching him maybe 77, 78. I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is the fact that my grandfather gave us yearbooks, and that's the connection I had with him was baseball, because he was older and he didn't have a lot of connection to us as kids, as grandchildren, but that was his connection. So my first thought is Jim Rice, and because, not just because of the color barrier, because he's just a genuinely nice guy. And there's a lot of unfortunately today, not everybody, not all the ball players, but there are some ball players that are a little bit of a prima donna attitude.
Oh, yeah. And interestingly enough, at the time, there were people who thought that Jim Rice was kind of standoffish and
Right.
it's like, well, yeah, if you were going through some of the stuff he was going through, you might be standoffish too. Excuse me.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what he was hearing in the field,
Yeah.
and I guarantee you
Bill
he
Russell
was.
of the Celtics years later.
Russell too. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Some of the stories about what he went through. Oy, I mean, not good. Not good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Definitely.
talk about
But I think Jim Rice for me would be. Oh, definitely.
Oh,
What
Jim Rice is
brought that all to mind was the conversation we started having the other night after Tom Seaver passed. For those that have no clue what I'm talking about here, not about Tom Seaver, but about like the other night. On most programs, a little inside baseball there. On most programs, when you're a new guest, they do a little warm up with you. Like they have you come on beforehand and, talk a little bit, not because they don't think you know what you're talking about, but they just want to, which in my case I don't, but which they just want to get a little feel for like, what's your style, what kind of questions can they ask you, what's your area of interest, that kind of thing. So Tom Seaver had just passed, and I mean, there's someone who, there are so many people that have admiration for Tom Seaver, okay? Not only was he a great pitcher, but people have said to me he was kind of the thinking man's pitcher. I mean, he took pitching very seriously. Not only was he good at it, but he was a student of the game, okay? And he went to college, for heaven's sake. I mean, a lot of people associate ball players with just like, oh, they barely got out of high school and that was on an athletic scholarship. No, I mean, we've had players that have like master's degrees in the game, seriously. Didn't Breslow have at least a master's with the Red Sox? I'm almost sure he did, but however you slice it.
Yeah.
However, no, I remember hearing him talk one time, and I went like, "Wow."
Oh, right. Oh, really?
Okay. He was talking about like he was going to go to medical school, and I'm like, "You're pitching for the Red Sox, dude? You're going to medical school?" Mo Vaughn finished his degree. Remember Mo Vaughn?
Oh
Of
yeah.
course.
Oh yeah.
I think most parents were like, "You're finishing your degree. You promised this. I don't care how much money you made for the Red Sox. You're finishing your," yes, Mom. It's like, okay. So, but yeah, Tom Seaver went to college. I'm told he was a really good conversationalist. I never met the man, but I know a lot of beat writers that did meet him. And they were like, wow, you could talk to him for hours if you wanted to. And he always had something interesting to say. So, it's a shame. I mean, he was only 75, and I gather he had dementia, and also COVID. And what a shame. I mean, we're losing a generation of ball players that many people grew up watching, and there you are. Anyway, here I am taking over your show. I apologize.
Yeah, no.
You had me on as a guest.
It's all. No, it's all good, Donna. It's this is what we do. We converse. We have conversations, and this is what we do. It's called conversation. So as far as I'm concerned, that's what you do when you have those. But I think it's kind of one of those situations where I used to watch, if you're a baseball purist or a basketball purist or somebody who loves a sport, you're going to watch that sport no matter what. My mother-in-law was bleeded black and gold. She was at the game in the garden, in the nosebleeds, gallery gods, when Bobby Orr scored that goal. She was there. And she just loved hockey. She used to, if a Bruins game was on, she used to watch college hockey or even high school hockey that was on.
Mommy,
the
please tell me why the Bruins can't win a playoff game.
The beanpot. I don't know. Wish I knew. I wish I knew why. But again, and we took her to
No, I know what you're talking about. There are some people,
Yeah.
I mean, Geddy Lee of Rush, the Toronto Blue Jays, I mean, when they were winning, he was a fan. When they were losing, he was a fan. I mean, he just loves baseball, loves the Jays. He got me into the Jays, for heaven's sake. Okay? I mean, obviously, I'm from Boston. I'm a Red Sox fan. But I started following the Jays just to have a conversation, for heaven's sake.
Right.
You know? And they had some really, really good players back in the late 80s, early 90s when they won the back-to-back World Series. I mean, I remember watching Jimmy Key and Tom Henke and, you know, folks like that, Dwayne Ward. The game is different now, though. And I don't want to do it was better in the old days, because it was different in the old days. But here's something I'm concerned with. And let me ask you, because you're younger than me.
Talking about Rafi, right?
That too. I'm very concerned about the fact that a lot of young people are not being apprenticed into baseball. Okay. When I was growing up, I would go to a game. I'd see a lot of young people in the stands. Okay. I was not the only one. These days, I know part of it is like the tickets are just outrageously expensive. Okay. And most of the games are on at night, which I've never agreed with, ever, okay? But to what would you attribute the fact that by and large, most of the passionate baseball fans are older?
Yeah, that's
My imagination?
No, it's really not. I mean, because that's the question. I mean, that I and a lot of big baseball fans keep asking themselves, and it's tough because it's true. I mean, there's just not that excitement from the younger generations that that there once was, and I honestly don't know if I have. I don't know. It's very, maybe Doug can answer better than I can.
Well, Robbie, you actually work for a baseball game, right?
I
You're
do.
doing baseball right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I'm assuming there's a lot. I don't know how many kids are there, but you would know. You're an umpire. You do this stuff. So, and you're a baseball purist. You would probably know a lot better just talking to these kids if they're obviously they're interested, but I don't know how many kids are there or if there's interest or what.
No, there is. There's interest in playing, the game, and there's interest in, being out on the field, and definitely, the numbers for little leagues and things like that are still at, I would say, relatively decent numbers. I think that the complaint that you hear just across the board is the length. I mean, I think if I had to sort of point to one particular thing, is that just for whatever reason, people, the attention spans are just so far shorter these days for, I don't know what, again, I don't know the reason for it, but
I do. Always have a professor on your show. Okay. Marshall McLuhan, and Doug was in my class when I said this, so there will be a quiz.
I'm getting all nervous now.
No, there have been a multitude of professors and scholars who have researched this. Marshall McLuhan talked about this back in like the 1960s. And he said that television was making people's attention span much shorter, such that people expected everything to be entertainment, wrap it right up, let's go to the next thing, now there's commercials, and there isn't the patience that people used to have. They want action. Okay, in this case, they want home runs. When I was growing up, and again, this is not the good old, no, there were no good old days. There were just different generations, okay? But when I was growing up, it was a much more small ball era. You had somebody that might bunt, somebody that get the runner over. It wasn't always like, and here comes King Kong Kelly, who's going to hit a home run. You know, it just wasn't always like that. I mean, yeah, sure, home runs were great. But you had pitchers who, by and large, went 7 or 8 innings, okay? Sometimes they did the entire complete game. It was expected. And you didn't have to slow down every 5 minutes for, you know, they had to bring in another pitcher and then this and that. And in fact, pitchers, everyone knew pitchers couldn't hit, but they didn't have a designated hitter back in those days. So, hey, you had a pitcher come up every now and then, they'd surprise you, right? Tim Wakefield was actually a pretty good hitting pitcher, but that's another story. My point is that what has changed is expectations. Let's use the internet as an example. Now, for those of us that are seeing this show, they're seeing it online for the most part, okay? Now, that was science fiction when I was growing up. The idea that you could like, oh my God, I can see this on my phone. Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, you can see it on your phone. Go back and watch Star Trek. Today, the expectation, I remember the 1990s, I'd wager you do too. Remember AOL and some of these other services where something would download, it would make this really long, and it would take like 20 minutes of your life for something to download. And you didn't complain because you had nothing to compare it to. Like my students always ask me when they hear an old radio show or watch an old TV show, oh my God, the quality on this is awful. No, not back in those days, because you were like,
You're lucky to hear it.
oh my God, is there this much beautifulness in the world? You know, people didn't even, they had no expectation. Today, if I'm trying to download something and it takes more than 10 seconds, it's like, you know. So I think baseball is something like that too. Baseball used to be like you went to the park, you ate your popcorn, you drank your whatever it was you were drinking, and you watched the game, you watched the athletes, the sights, the sounds. It took about 2 hours, and then you went home and you were just really happy. But today it's kind of like, I've been sitting here 5 minutes and there hasn't been a home run. You know, just different expectations. And in a culture with a short attention span, where there's so many choices, where you can just with the, you know, just your browser, like, oh, I don't like this podcast, let's try another one. I don't like this webcast, let's try another one. Growing up, I didn't have all those options. There weren't 500 channels. There weren't 90,000 options. And I was just real pleased to have this. I mean, God, this was amazing to me. This as in going to the game or being able to watch it on TV, that sort of thing. So I really do believe the expectation of the fans has changed. Like, why is football more popular than baseball? Okay, when I was growing up, it was the opposite. It was baseball that was popular. The Patriots, you kidding me? When the Patriots came along, the empty seats at the stadium, I mean, hello. But today, you can't get seats at Gillette to get, no, you're not going. So everything is, you know, I understand times change. But I don't think baseball has really addressed what fans want today versus what they wanted years ago. And the tinkering that they have done has almost kind of like changed the game. There's nothing wrong with the game.
Uh-oh. Don't get Robbie started on the purist thing. But yes,
I understand that things change. I'm not talking about that. I understand that even when I was growing up, the game was the game, but they still tinkered with it. I mean, come on, there wasn't a big deal with relief pitchers, okay? Now it's like everybody's got not just a closer, but somebody who sets up the closer and somebody who sets up the setup guy who sets up the closer. But I know. I just feel like there's something about baseball itself that is really wonderful, and I would hate to lose that. I really would.
Yeah. I will say this. I draw the line at them putting runners at second base in extra innings, but that's a topic for a
Those
different
kinds of
day.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I
But,
think they're trying
yeah.
too hard to make it like, oh my God, people want action, so we'll give them action.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously, growing up a big Red Sox fan, obviously, one of the big things about being a Red Sox fan is this just hatred that you're born with for a certain team from the Bronx there that I will not name.
Does the team begin with the letter Y, as in,
Yeah.
why are we talking about this?
No, but just it's interesting because you made me think of it, is that even that rivalry, even the Red Sox-Yankee rivalry, like when I was growing up, in the 90s and even into the early 2000s, I mean, it was just the biggest thing ever. And I just feel like, yeah, it's still a big rivalry, but I just feel like it's lost some of that, especially over recent years, it's kind of lost some of that luster to a lot of people. And it's disappointing because, like I said, when I was growing up, if you saw a Yankee, you saw somebody wearing a Yankee hat walking down the streets of Boston, there were things being said. I think
that there's something else too, and forgive me for interrupting.
No.
It's horrible to have to get yelled at for doing it, and my apologies. There's something else. I was just reading something earlier today about Cal Ripken. Now, and I know that there are very few players who did what Cal Ripken did. Okay? I mean, seriously. I mean, that Iron Man record, I mean, what was it? Like, God, how many games did he play consecutively? It was a 2,101, I think.
Yeah.
And there were a few more after that.
Oh, yeah.
It started in like May of 1982, and it ended in like September of 1995.
Yeah.
Donna, what's your point? My point is, Ripken was around for years. Today, we're almost kind of like rooting for laundry because like a lot of the players, it's like every year they go somewhere else or they go somewhere else. They're trying to get a better deal.
Yeah.
I hate to keep coming back to when I was growing up, but even into the 70s and 80s, and even to some degree before the players' strike of the 90s, there were players that you knew were going to come back. You knew they were going to be there. You knew that they were there for you. Like thinking about the Celtics back when I was watching them. I mean, Havlicek wasn't going to be there for 5 minutes. Okay. He was going to be with the team. Okay. When I watched the Celtics in the 50s and the 60s, you had Tommy Heinsohn. You had Heinsohn and Luskatov at the forwards, Russell at center, Sharman and Kuzi at the guards. Okay. And they were there. Sam Jones, Casey Jones, they were there for years. Now, agreed, sometimes people got traded. Trades are a part of life. But by and large, when you bond with a player, and then the next season they're gone, I think it makes it harder. I think that the Cal Ripkens of the world, the fact that they had such longevity with their team, helped the fans to bond with them, to feel like, well, these really are our guys, they're from our neighborhood. And I don't see that as much either today.
No, not at all. I mean, look at just perfect example, Mookie Betts. I mean, going.
Oh God!
I understand he was traded.
That broke my heart.
Yeah, it broke mine too. Believe me. I mean, and listen, I understand that they traded, but then to see him sign that huge contract with another team, it's just like. It was.
But that's it. If you're a kid growing up and you have bonded with your favorite player and they have a great year and then they have a great another year and then they're gone.
Yeah.
You just got to know them and now they're gone. So it's become, to me anyway, it's become a lot more of a business. It was always a business. But I think that there was an understanding that you got to let people have roots in the community. You got to let players be from here, even if they're not really from here. I mean, in the case of Ripken, he was from there. He was from the greater Baltimore area. But these players, I mean, they come and they go. And that's not just the Red Sox. That's a trend. And I'm not sure it's a good one.
Yeah, that's why guys like Paul, you're talking about the Celtics, Paul Pierce is, such a great recent example of someone who actually, stayed with the team through thick and thin and just was.
Oh, and David Ortiz with the Red Sox.
Yeah. I know he came here, via free agency, but he basically, set his roots in Massachusetts, in Boston, and
into the community.
Yeah.
Such that, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing Big Papi.
Tim Wakefield too.
Yeah.
Wakefield.
Yeah.
Tim Wakefield the same way. I love Tim Wakefield, okay? I think he was very underappreciated. Seriously. I will go on record as saying that.
I agree. Well, it's on record.
One of my favorites.
He was great, yeah. He was wonderful. He was a great pitcher.
And anybody that could throw a knuckleball, what can I say? Okay?
And threw it well.
Yeah.
And threw it well. There are guys out there that can throw knuckleballs, but they don't throw it like he does.
No,
that's his first pitch, and it's pretty much his only pitch.
Not at all.
So yeah, not too many guys out there like that.
Watching Hoyt Wilhelm, and he was.
Heard the name.
He was with the Orioles, and he was a knuckleball pitcher, and I remember hitters talking about how you mentally prepare for a knuckleball pitcher. It's like you go up there. I remember a quote. You go up there and you go, I'm not going to swing too soon. I'm not going to swing too soon. I'm not going to swing too soon. I swung too soon. Okay? Because it's a very deceptive pitch. And you're mentally saying to yourself, I'm going to wait this one out. And before you know it, it's by you. And you're like, how did that even happen? So, yeah. So Wakefield was like that. When Wakefield was on, when he was pitching well, when he had control of that knuckleball, oh my God, you couldn't hit it if you had it didn't matter what you had, okay? You couldn't hit it. So, yeah, I have such admiration for people that have that mastery over that pitch. Hard pitch to throw.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're going to ask me some questions, and here I am hijacking your show. I'm a horrible person.
You're not hijacking.
Oh,
it's all good. This is Robbie. This is what we do, man.
I have one more question that came to mind.
You do have. And Robbie came prepared.
Yeah, and then I will handle it back over to Doug. You were talking about, you gave such a great synopsis of sort of some of the great traits about sports broadcasters, and I guess I was curious. It sort of brought to mind the question. Today, obviously in Boston sports, we've sort of had, some broadcasters who have stayed around for a long time, and some who are sort of new on the scene in Boston. So I was just sort of curious, who are some of the better Boston sports broadcasters? It could be now, or it can be, throughout the years that you've seen, Donna, that have sort of come through, any of the Boston sports for that matter.
Well, I had the privilege, and some people are going to be laughing their tushies off when I say this, but I had the privilege of listening to Johnny Most calling the Celtics games. And if you never heard the late, great Johnny Most calling a Celtics game, every single play was like this! And it was like this! And it was like this. That was Johnny. He always sounded like somebody had lit his tushy on fire. And in fact, there was a game when he dropped an ash.
Dropped a cigarette. He dropped a cigarette.
Yep.
Yes, it's the famous cigarette game. It's not a good thing.
Yep. But no, he was an acquired taste, but he was a homer. You want to talk about somebody who bled the Celtic green? Didn't matter. Celtics always good. Other team, a filthy, dirty play, but yeah, exactly. Dude, your guy just did the same thing. Doesn't matter.
He started it.
Oh yeah.
The last play.
But yeah, if you can ever go on YouTube and find some Johnny Most, Havlicek stole the ball. Yeah, Johnny Most was just one of a kind. He really was. I grew up listening to Kurt Gowdy back when he was here in Boston, and his sidekick was a guy named Bob Murphy, said Donna, reaching for her collection of stuff. This is a
Love the collection.
1958 Red Sox yearbook.
Wow.
My personal
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And if it exists, Auntie Donna probably has it. And Kurt Gowdy's sidekick was a guy named Bob Murphy. Now, shameless plug.
Aren't you writing something, Donna?
There is a new book. Yes. There's a new book coming out. It's called The New York Mets in Popular Culture. And I have a chapter in it. And the chapter is about Bob Murphy. Kurt Gowdy had a sidekick. It was when I was growing up. It was Kurt Gowdy and Bob Murphy. And I did not know anything about Bob Murphy till years later. I didn't know that he came from Oklahoma. I didn't know how he came to Boston, the Gansamagilla. And I wrote a chapter about his years before he became the longtime Mets broadcaster. So if any of your viewers are Mets fans or listeners, they should be able to get that book about the New York Mets in popular culture. The editor is David Krell, Krell, available for pre-order wherever you pre-order books. Said Donna, hoping that you'll go to an independent bookstore and keep them alive during the pandemic, because we like independent bookstores. But here also from my personal collection is the Baltimore Orioles 1961 yearbook. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why, Donna? Well, because when Bob Murphy left, he left for a better job after he was never going to be the lead announcer in Boston. That was always going to be Kurt Gowdy. And he had a chance to go to Baltimore and, just make a name for himself, not knowing that the team's sponsors would ultimately decide that they wanted somebody else, but that's another story for another time. My point is, late at night, AM radio, the signals would come in from other cities like gangbusters. And I could tune in to WBAL in Baltimore, even though I was sitting in Boston. And I could hear Bob Murphy, who I had grown up with, calling play-by-play for the Baltimore Orioles, which was incredibly cool for me. So there you go. So I have a whole collection of my favorite announcers, where they were, what they were doing. And then I write biographical sketches about them. A lot of the stuff that I write about these days is about the Negro Leagues, because if you want to talk about an entire area of sports that doesn't get the attention it deserves, the baseball writers who covered the Negro Leagues. And I just got a new bio up about Frank Fay Young. Frank Young was, by all accounts, the first full-time Black sportscaster, sports writer. And going way, way back, he wrote for the Chicago Defender. He had a 4.5-decade career as a sports writer. And most people today. So I'm one of a multitude of people who want to make sure that these folks are remembered, because without them, we wouldn't have Negro Leagues history. So where Frank Young was a sports writer, I believe I erroneously said sportscaster. He did get on the air later in his career, but he mostly was a sports writer. And I also wrote about Jocko Maxwell, who was the first Black sportscaster, going back to 1929. And you want to know something that's a sin? Jocko Maxwell had a 4-decade career on the radio in New York, broadcasting, commentating, interviewing. I mean, he didn't just do Negro Leagues. He did the white teams, the players came on his shows. He was people bowed before him. He never got paid.
Wow.
White people at the station got paid. He never got paid.
Wow.
He worked at the post office to support himself. And by the way, the post office was one of the few major places, major organizations that even during segregation hired people of color and gave them an entree into a middle-class life. So Jocko Maxwell worked at the post office, and then he did play-by-play, and he did interviewing, and he had a commentary show in New York, and I mean, 4 decades. And if I said Jocko Maxwell to most people, they'd be like, who? Or Frank Fay Young, who? So those of us at Sabre are trying to make sure that those good folks get remembered as they should.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Doug, you're
Yes.
still with us.
I am. I'm riveted. I am
Boring
definitely
you to
riveted.
tears, am I right?
No, you're not. No.
By the way, a wonderful book. This is called Here's the Pitch. It's the amazing true story of baseball and advertising. Okay?
Oh boy.
And this is a wonderful book. And I find this kind of stuff fascinating. It just came out last year, University of Nebraska Press, Roberta Newman. And I've read her stuff before. It's all about how, in order to survive in sports, the play-by-play folks had to be pitchmen. They had to like sell beer and, sell cars and sell this. And like doing the play-by-play wasn't enough. I mean, the only way Jocko Maxwell got paid at all was he did sponsor type stuff. But a lot of the other folks, even the ones that were getting paid, they used their products that they sponsored and they became identified. I mean, I remember Kurt Gowdy doing Narragansett beer and the Atlantic Refinery, which was a gas station. Atlantic keeps your car on the go. I still remember the jingles. But I probably shouldn't sing them. But my point is that, this is just a fascinating book about how, in order to survive as sports announcers, you had to sell products. And so that's the kind of research that fascinates me. And there are a bunch of good folks doing that research today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be warned. Just want to warn you.
Oh, go ahead.
The new semester for Lesley University, which kindly pays me, is about to start up. And I am up to my ears in syllabi, research, and a whole host of other stuff. So
Absolutely.
We may have to wrap this in a couple of minutes. And if I haven't totally alienated you, I'll be happy to come back for part 2.
Oh, of course. We'd love to have you back.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I've been watching the time in the corner too, Donna, making sure. I know we had discussed this at the time, so that's no worries.
I'd love to talk indefinitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
I know you're paid by the word, but still.
No, of course. Well, Robbie's going to pay you by the word. I was going to pay you by the sentence, but he said by the word is better. So I said, okay, you pay her. No, I just wanted to get a sense of, since we're wrapping it up a little bit right now, I wanted to get a sense of, we do a final thought at the end of our show, and it could be any thought whatsoever, whatever's on your mind, current event, whatever. And what we do is we kind of throw it out there, and we each kind of do one. If we have a guest, we ask them if they have a final thought. If you don't have a final thought, that's okay. I can't imagine that Donna Halper doesn't have a thought, Ed, because we do. So wanted to know, Donna, what your final thought for the evening would be.
Well, I just found a quote, and I thought it was an interesting quote. It's from Ursula Le Guin, the science fiction writer, and it says, "You cannot buy the revolution. You cannot make the revolution. You can only be the revolution. It is in your spirit or it is nowhere." Now, the reason that appealed to me is because we're living in a time, and that's an actual quote, it's not one of those fake quotes you see online. Rule number 1 that I tell my students always: fact check the quote, because social media is filled with, "I can't believe so-and-so said," and then you look and it's like, no, they didn't say anything like that, okay? But in this case, yeah, it comes from a book from 1974, and a short story. But the reason I liked the quote is there's a lot of people out there complaining and waiting for someone else to do something about it. And my attitude has always been, yeah, there's a lot of stuff wrong in society today, but what are you doing about it? Sitting on Twitter and sending out mean tweets isn't doing something about it. Sitting around with your friends and having one and talking about what a crappy society it is isn't doing anything about it. So if you go to my Facebook page, you'll notice there's a quote on it, and it's kind of similar to what I just read to you from Ursula Le Guin. It says, it's from the Talmud, which is a book of commentaries on the Bible, and you don't have to be religious to get into it. It says, it's from Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our ancestors. And I teach ethics, so I'm always thinking about ethics. It says, you are not expected to complete the task, but neither are you expected to walk away from it. So, yeah, you can wait for somebody else to be the revolution. You can wait for somebody else to complete the task. Or you can just take on your little corner of the world and do what you can to make things better. Is there someone you can reach out to? Is there someone you can show some kindness to? Is there someone you can take to a game when we're, back up and running again? Is there someone you can do a little volunteer work with? Is there somebody who's lonely and you can give them a call? It may not seem like much, but everything has got to start somewhere. I hate to see us deteriorate into our dueling camps of like, my team's better than your team, so Nah, we're all humans. We're all here together. It may not seem like it, but we all do inhabit the same planet. I'm happy to be able to talk sports with people. It's wonderful to do it. But I also want to talk about how can we find some common ground? How can we work together and make this society a little bit kinder, a little bit more compassionate, and a little bit more ethical? That's all I get.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not following that up, Robbie. It's you next.
Boy, that's a
What's
tough
your
act
final
to
thought
follow
if you
there.
could come up with it?
No, I
I
guess.
just want to thank you for having me on your show. I hope I didn't dominate it or take it over.
No.
I'm not doing a humble brag. I'm saying I'm talent. I'm your guest. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
No,
no,
bring me on to take over the show.
no, it's all good. It's all good.
It was
all good. No worries.
fantastic. It was fantastic having you, and I just wanted to say, we were talking about earlier. I mean, obviously, Tom Seaver passed away earlier this week, and I know, we at the Sports Blitz send our condolences and our thoughts to his family and to Mets fans everywhere, and it just was a really talented pitcher and had a great career, and definitely it's a shame to see him go, but left behind quite the legacy in the baseball world. So just wanted to not a big final thought tonight, but just wanted to say rest in peace to, like I said, the legendary Tom Seaver.
Absolutely. And the other little thing I would say, and I said this on social media, I really recommend letting people know you love and care about them while they're still here. Because, in the case of Tom Seaver, most of us don't know the guy, okay? We've read about him, maybe we know some beat writers, but unless we're sportscasters, we probably aren't hanging with these folks. But we are hanging with other folks.
Yeah.
And maybe they need a kind word in times like, we're in the middle of a damn pandemic, kids, Maybe there's some people that could use a kind word. Maybe there's somebody that could use to just get up on Zoom with them and talk about some of the games they used to watch and this and that. They might appreciate it. A little trip down memory lane, might be fun. But tell people you care about them now while they still can appreciate it. So I just want to say thank you very much for having me on your show, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope I was okay as a guest.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
definitely. And my final thought is the fact that I don't know if I've ever told you, and I'm going to kvel a little bit, and I apologize if it's going to make you uncomfortable. I hope it won't. But you were very incredibly instrumental in making me love what I do and what I have done since I have taken your courses, since I took your first course, which is to love mass communication. You have taken what I have done my whole life and put it into a different perspective by having a conversation and being there. And if I say, hey, Donna, how you doing? Let's go have lunch somewhere. Legal Seafood is the best place. Something like that. Those kinds of things are so important. And you always, every single class, you always told us to do exactly what you just said, which is to go and say hello to somebody, go and talk to somebody, go and do this, go and do that, something good in the world. And I just want to say it's been a pleasure to have you on, Donna.
Yeah.
And the fact is that you have touched, and I have talked to other Emersonians that had you at Emerson. The fact that when you went to speak in LA at the Star on the ground for Rush.
Yeah.
The star that they
Hollywood
put
Walk
down
of
there,
Fame.
the Hollywood Walk of Fame. All you have to do is you have to YouTube this, because when you YouTube it, all you hear in the background is people saying Donna, Donna, Donna. And the reason that they're saying that is because those are Emersonian students who live in LA, who knew you were going to be there, who wanted to just catch a glimpse, not just of Rush, but of Donna Halper. And this is why I am part of who I am today. I went to school later in life, but still, you were a incredible influence on how I move forward. And I just want to thank you.
Trying my best here, trying to do a mitzvah wherever I can.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, one must go. Thank you for the kind words. I'm not sure I
Thank you.
Donna, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely. It was fabulous. Thank you so
Let
much.
me
You
know
have
when
a
it's
great.
up, and let me know what the link is so I can give you a little bit of publicity. And
I
Definitely
will. I will.
Definitely will.
really appreciated the
Absolutely.
Thank you
Thank you
again.
so
I love
much.
sports. I really
Absolutely. And we'll have you on again too,
Absolutely.
Donna. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thanks
without
so
a
much.
doubt.
Love
Part
you guys.
two.
Thanks, Donna.
Thanks, Donna.
What a terrific guest, and I mean, just
I have no words, Robbie. I have no words.
Quite the pleasure to have Donna on our show. I mean, just this is what having basically just met the woman, 2 times now. The other night when we did our little pre-show production
Pre-game,
meeting,
no pre-game.
and tonight, I mean, she is just a class act, and just an amazing guest to have on. And just I learned so much just in those 2 encounters that I could ever hope for. So
there's so much, Robbie. There's so much knowledge.
Yeah.
There's so much she knows, and that's why I wanted to take every class that she had, because she's the kind of teacher that you remember for a lifetime. When you're sitting and you're remembering the old days, whatever the old days are. You remember the old days, and you go, "Oh, who was your favorite teacher? Who was your favorite professor?" Well, guess what? Donna's on my list, and she has. And again, I'm not blowing her horn. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. As you can tell, she is very modest about what she does.
Yeah.
She has an incredible amount of knowledge, especially about sports, and that's why I wanted her on this.
Yeah.
Because especially about baseball. And baseball is not a forgotten sport, but if you listen to sports radio these days, they're saying, is it still going to be around? Is it still going to be the way it was, or is it going to change and people are going to move away from it? And all this unrest that's going on in the world, and how are we going to do this, and that kind of thing. So the fact that not only does she study it, but she's a historian and she studies this stuff. She's very knowledgeable, and she's just one of those people that once it's like we had the baseball 101 class. That's exactly what it was.
Baseball and sports broadcasting 101. It was great.
Broadcasting 101.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It just wild. Just so very wild. And I'm just super glad to have her on. Hopefully we can have her on for part 2 sometime down the road. But
absolutely.
Just a great show.
Yeah.
Great show. And I do hope that we have her on sometime down the road. And we don't have plans to do that yet, but I'm sure she'll be fine with coming back on again.
Absolutely.
What did you think about just the history? It was just incredible.
It was fantastic. I mean, just to listen to some of these names that I had heard of, and some of these names that I'm not as familiar with, and you felt like you really got the full picture of who these people were from listening to her, discuss it. And like I said, it was just, she is such a historian and such a master of, just the history of sports broadcasting and baseball and all these things. I mean, I did not go to Emerson, and I did not have the privilege of taking a course with this woman. I would take every course that I possibly could with her after
exactly
just
what I did.
Interactions with her.
Even if I didn't have to take it, I took it anyway. It was as a distribution, just because she's just that kind of person. She's knowledgeable, but she wants to know what your opinion is, and that's very rare for a professor these days. Typically what they do is they give you information, they stick it on the board, and they hand you a test. It's multiple choice, or it's
essay or
one
whatever.
word.
Yes.
No, just one word answers. She never did that. She did it a couple times because she had to as part of what she had to do for the course. Typically her tests were all about essays.
Yeah.
We talked about sports broadcasting. We talked about we talked about Bob Murphy. What did you think about the era of Bob Murphy? What did you think about how he went about doing the sports broadcasting? And you had to write a paragraph.
Yeah.
She wanted to know about how much, that's how she knew that you knew the material. And having the conversations, discourse. It was all about discourse. Yeah. So I think this is what we need to do these days. We have to have discourse between all of them.
Civilly.
Yes, civil discourse, of course. To be able to talk through some of the stuff that's going on these days. But just, I had so much in the sheet, Robbie. We didn't even get to not even half of it.
And it was fantastic. You know what? It was fine that we didn't, because it was a fantastic hour of just reminiscing / just talking sports. And that's what we do here on the Sports Blitz.
That's
we
right.
Talk sports, and we talk about how the Celtics and Raptors are tied at 95 with 4 minutes to go in Game 3. Yes, I'm multitasking a little bit here.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that, but you caught me before I did.
But no, I think this was a great episode, and I really hope to have her on again. And we got, as Doug, I'm sure you're going to mention here coming up, we got some more great stuff coming up for you in future episodes, as we roll on down the road here.
We certainly do, and very much looking forward to those future episodes. But certainly take a listen to this one if you missed it. And this one's going to go down as a great episode, but certainly one of the great ones that we've had.
Yeah.
But hey, listen, we had a great episode. We thank everybody. And this is the Sports Blitz with episode number 53. Next week, we're going to have, obviously, episode 54. And we'll have some other great stuff for you to listen to and to see. And That's all I got,
That's what we
Robbie.
got. Yeah. Thank you again to Donna Halper for
Thanks to
stopping
Donna
by.
Halper
Again,
for stopping by.
many thanks to Donna.
Absolutely.
Much
Absolutely.
appreciated. And thank you, Doug, as always, for being here. And pleasure to hang out with you as always, virtually. And,
Yes, absolutely. And listen, everybody have a great Labor Day weekend. I can't
Yeah.
believe it's Labor Day already.
Doesn't feel like it at all. Does
No,
not
it
feel
doesn't.
like Labor
It
Day at
doesn't.
all.
It doesn't. And the people that are under a rock or in a cave are not even going to know it's Labor Day, so we have to mention it. Everybody have a great long weekend,
Yeah.
and we will talk to you next time.
See you, everybody.